My new book, Pillars for Life, A Guide to Spiritual Ethics and Practice, is now out and available for you to read and purchase. You can check out our website, willowhealing.org, to find a link, or you can find it on Amazon. We look forward to getting your feedback, and if you love it, please leave a review and share with your friends. Now it's time for the show. Welcome to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We are so excited to have you joining us on this journey where we explore different ways to empower your soul, whether it's healing in your kitchen or all the way up in the corporate world. Come with us as we look into different ways to heal your mind, body, and soul. Hey everyone, it's Catherine from Willow Healing, and today I am here with Beatty Carmichael, who is the author of The Prayer of Freedom. It's dedicated to helping people break free from chronic pain, mental health struggles, addictions, and more. He teaches at the largest addiction recovery center in America, which is home to over 500 women. While working with these women, he developed a unique three-step approach to prayer, one with an astounding 87% success rate in setting them free from their struggles. In real-world terms, it means that this is for every 20 addicts who take his class and apply this process, nearly 18 leave completely free. No addictions, no chronic pain, no anxiety, no depression, no bipolar disorders, all gone. Over the years, he has seen God heal over 700 people through prayer and transform lives in ways many never thought possible. If you're struggling with relationship conflicts, chronic pain, migraines, depression, anxiety, panic attacks, and more, you're in for a big treat today. Beatty is here to reveal the root cause of most of these issues and walk you through a simple three-step prayer approach to break free once and for all. And we will definitely talk about your book as well. So a big welcome to the show, Beatty.
Thank you. I am thrilled to be here, Catherine, and looking forward to whatever's going to come out. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. We were talking before we put the recording on, and we were already having these gem moments. We're like, no, we've got to be again. So I guess that gives us a little bit of insight, but what pulled you to actually work in addiction in the first place?
If I were to be really candid, I was going to say if I was to be honest, but I always am honest. But if I were to be really candid, Catherine, um, what I started to see is it's the unexpected, unexplainable, that the only word you can use is miraculous. And I I started teaching at the Addiction Recovery Center because what I was doing prior to then is I was just going out to Walmart here in town, which is just a large department store, and I would just walk up to people and say, hey, I'm out praying for people, anything I can pray for you on, because I found that a lot of times when I would pray for people, dramatic breakthrough type of healing things would occur, and I saw people with blind eyes open. I've seen people with broken bones or other issues kind of heal their own premise. And some of the people I kept walking up to were I call them love lady center ladies, because they'll take their addicts, these women, and take them out on a shopping excursion once a week. So as I was out at Walmart, that's where they would take them. And I kept running into some of the leadership, some of the staff at the center, and they fell in love with me because I was genuine. I really wanted to pray for them. And so they asked me if I wanted to teach at their center, which is kind of unusual because they don't allow many men to teach because there's a lot of risk. So it was a real honor, but that's how it got there. I got invited there because I kept praying for their people out at Walmart all the time.
I love it. I'm getting goosebumps. That is such a beautiful story of how you ended up there and just the genuine service that you wanted to do of purely just praying out of like the goodness of your heart rather than expecting anything in return. But, it's nice when the miracles do come with that as well.
Yes.
But at the same time, just having that intention. And if anyone's not gelling with the word prayer, we were talking about this before the show, just replace it with intention or manifesting or whatever works for you, because prayer is a form of focused intention of how you want something to happen or sending love at that highest vibration and coming in from God. That's my interpretation of it anyway. I don't know if yours is any different, baby.
That's pretty close. It's for me, it's just like communicating with a higher power, this creator God, whoever he might be, and recognizing that he can do things we can't. So if we want a miracle in the life because there's no breakthrough, I'm stuck with my chronic pain or my anxiety or depression or addiction, and man can't solve it, then the next step is, well, maybe God who created me can. So we start to try to talk to him. That's how I look at prayer. And it's been pretty effective that way so far.
Yeah, and it's such a beautiful interpretation. And I relate to this so much because I do sometimes with my clients and definitely with myself, I do a thing called theta healing, and you actually go up to God and you command what you want to heal, or you command, and you have to command because the universe doesn't like wishy-washy. You have to be
Right.
really clear on what you want, and you go up and you command, and then you just see what healing happens. And personally, I've done it on myself, like going up to God, and I ran into this metal door stopper we had on the floor in the dark, and I heard a crack, and I was like, and I knew it was my ankle. I'm like, no, 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 this isn't happening. And I went up and I did this theta healing, and I felt my foot go click, 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 and it and when I like got into the light, it was like just a little tiny bruise there, like nothing happened. And
Wow.
yeah, and the miracle of that and the power of that, because when you go up to God's energy and you're calling in God's energy, it surpasses any of our beliefs. It surpasses any restrictions we put ourselves, and He is infinite. He can allow anything to, or she, whatever you resonate with, but they can allow anything to happen.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because I'll be a little less how should I say, subtle with the miraculous side of things that I consistently see through this, and be a little bit more open now that I know that you believe in the similar stuff. Yeah, I'm constantly declaring the weather to be what I wanted, especially like if I'm taking a trip or we have a creek in the backyard that used to just overflow and wash out the shoreline. So I just declared stop that, and it hasn't ever overflowed again. I mean, it's just like there's a lot of power in that in the declarations.
Definitely. And it's so funny you bring up the weather because I remember we were at the zoo and it was for my son's, I don't know, a special day for my son. I don't remember exactly what, but he wanted to watch this bird show. That's all he wanted to do. But if it was rainy, it wasn't going to happen. And these dark clouds came over and it started to rain. And I just said, God, there are a lot of people here that really want to see this show today. And I know this is a bit selfish, but at the same time, if you could stop raining just in time for this show to happen, I would be incredibly grateful, and so would my little one. Anyway, it finished raining 1 minute before the show started. The show happened.
I love it.
And I was like, thank you, thank you, thank you,
Yeah.
acknowledged, thank you.
I do almost the same thing with parking spaces, especially when you're in a crowded area. I always like the privilege of knowing that I'm special. So I declare a parking space right up front. My wife says, we need to park way back here where all the cars are. Nope, there'll be a parking space right up front. Usually right as I get there, a car pulls out and I go right into the parking space right up front every time.
Yeah.
90% of the time at least, I would think.
Yeah,
So
because it's like you've manifested that through the gift of prayer and through that intention of, this would just be great. I don't care if it doesn't happen, but this would be really nice if it did happen. And so I'm just handing it over to you now and we'll see what happens.
Well, what's interesting, so we'll get into this, the prayer of freedom, but a key part of what this is after handling spiritual roots, it is the commanding of the healing to take place. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. I'm glad you understand that part of it.
I do. And if anyone's listening and thinking these two are crazy, that's okay. Just skip to the next episode or hang on and roll with our crazy because we are both talking the same lingo here. We only met, 20 minutes ago online. So we haven't orchestrated this conversation at all. And the fact that we're both having very similar experiences on completely different parts of the world should be enough to make you go, maybe miracles do happen.
Well, here's something interesting. And so if you're getting a little wacky over there and you're thinking about skipping this episode, don't, because I've approached everything from a scientific perspective using empirical data to back up and to perfect what I do. And now, here's what's really interesting, Catherine. You mentioned I wrote this book. It's called The Prayer of Freedom.
Yes.
And you can find it at theprayerfreedombook.com. But what I do at the Addiction Recovery Center is for my class, and my class is a favorite because, as you mentioned on the introduction, that for every 20 students who come into my class, when they go through this process, nearly 18 of them get complete freedom from all their addictions, from all their chronic pain, from all their mental illnesses. If they're on medications for anxiety, depression, panic attack, bipolar disorder, things of that sort, they're able to get off the medications. And literally, Catherine, all I do is I give them the book and I make
Yeah.
space for them to do the worksheet in the back.
Yeah.
And I've measured it at about 87% success rate with
Wow.
them doing it all on their own, not me doing anything. And that 87% success rate is I have to make a list of all the issues that they're going through at that time. So you got drug addictions, you got trauma issues, you got emotional wounds, you got pain, you got mental illnesses, and that 87% is like almost everything, if not all of it, completely gone. Goes from whatever it was down to zero. It doesn't even exist anymore. So it's not a matter of them believing this works. I found that if you simply do the process works because there's something in the spiritual realm that drives what happens in our earthly realm. And a lot of the issues that we deal with have a spiritual root. And the reason man can't solve it, the reason you have an addict that is in recovery center after recovery center after recovery center is because man doesn't know how to solve the addiction. The reason you have someone that's living with anxiety or depression and manic depression, panic attacks for decades is because man doesn't really know how to resolve it. And yet I find that most of these things have a spiritual root, and that's why man can cover over the top in the physical realm, but the root still exists in the spiritual realm. And if you get rid of that root, then the whole thing disappears. So this is
Yeah.
really cool
Yeah.
what God's been showing me on this.
Yeah, and it's such a beautiful analogy what you said. It's like you have to uncover everything and find the root, because so often a lot of people who I've interviewed as well about addiction, like yourself, Beatty, working with addiction, is that it's the band-aid approach. It's like, oh, let's get you off it. But then you have to go back into the real world and all the underlying trauma that caused you to go to the addiction to numb whatever
Yes.
was going on is still there. So unless you actually go to those deeper levels, and I feel too, like when you were sharing that a lot of people that sign up for your class, they've already shown an intent to change, right? They've already shown and said to God, I am ready to change. I am ready to commit to making a change in my life. And I'm curious about this. So then you just create that space for them to come in and they actually do the work themselves, because that is what the best guides do. You just go, here are the tools. Off you go. I'm here if you have questions. I'm holding this space for you. But you have already made the conscious choice to change. So things are going to start to change in your life.
That's I could say amen to that. That's a big amen. Got it dead on.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess, like, from talking about that, what is the 3 simple steps that come through working through the Prayer for Freedom book and also through when you're holding this space with these beautiful women?
Yeah, so what I started to share the steps, let me give just a little structure to it. One of the things I've been testing, and I say I've been testing because this has been going on for 8.5 or 9 years now, and I've been perfecting this down using sort of a research-based approach to prayer, which means you do a prayer process and you measure the results, and you modify and you measure, and you keep working until you got more and more consistent results. And one of the things I find is that there's a whole number of different things that happen in our life. I call them spiritual issues because everything we do occurs in the physical realm, but they have a spiritual implication. And the best way to describe this, as I get into this 3-step prayer process, is uh, we have a conscience, and what I sense is that this God of the universe, when He created everything, He built into us a sense of right and wrong. And that's what our conscience does. When we do something wrong, we kind of feel guilty and convicted in our conscience, right? And so that tells us that we did something that was not the way God would really have, that God really designed us to do. We kind of did our own stuff. And so when our conscience convicts us, what I'm starting to realize is if we don't say, I'm sorry for that, then there's consequences that start to happen. And the analogy, I have a little girl and 2 boys. So my little girl, Marianne, when she was little, if she was like all fussy one day and just disobedient and cranky, I might say, you need to calm down and you need to obey. Stop that. And she doesn't stop. So I put her in timeout. And in timeout, she starts to just ponder on what's going on. And then she'll come to me and say, Daddy, I'm so sorry. I've been fussy and I didn't mean to. I'm just sorry. And that's all I wanted her to do. I just wanted her to confess. I'll hug her and say, oh, I love you. That's okay now. And time to get out of timeout. In other words, the consequence lasted as long as she did not confess, and I'll use a kind of a spiritual word, repent. Basically saying, I'm sorry, I was wrong. That's all repentance means. So what I started to assess is that's what happens with these spiritual roots. When we do something that our conscience convicts us of, or if our conscience doesn't convict us of because maybe we've done it so much that we've just grown numb to it, but it's still against what this God of the universe wants us to do, then I find that these are the issues that start to create consequences in our lives that manifest either in physical pain, like I got a pain in the back or pain in my, the migraines or whatever it is. It'll manifest in mental anguish, anxiety, depression, all the mental illness type stuff. It'll manifest with a physical issue where things don't work, like you have glaucoma or you have deaf ears or your right foot doesn't really work because something's just not working right. And it'll also manifest in things like addictions. So all of these have a common root of something that we've done that violated the wiring within our conscience. And if we simply reverse that, then we can reverse the consequence. So with that as the backdrop, here's the three steps, real simple. It's simple to explain it. It's a little bit more difficult to apply it. But the three steps is number one, right? How do you make a cake? You throw a bunch of flour together and some milk and some eggs and some butter and stir it all up and put it in the oven. But if that's all you did, you would never make a cake, right? There's an ingredients, a recipe that you follow. But here's the kind of the simple process. Step one is identifying the spiritual root behind that struggle. So if you're dealing with addiction or you're dealing with depression or you're dealing with a migraine, what is the spiritual root there? And the way that I've learned to identify it, there's kind of several ways. One is sometimes we can ask God, I'm tired of this headache. Is there a spiritual root tied to this, right? And anything that comes to mind, something you did that you shouldn't have done, someone that hurt you and you haven't forgiven them, whatever it is. Then step two, you now get rid of that by simply saying, I'm sorry. I confess I was wrong. Okay, that's it. That's all he wants is just a confession that we did it wrong. The big word is repent, but that's essentially what it is. And what that does, and I'm realizing it's sort of like it kills the root. The root is the having done something wrong and not owning up to it. But once you own up to it, then that root goes away. And once the root goes away, then whatever the physical manifestation into our life that was tied to that root, let's say it's a migraine, it goes away as well. Sometimes I've seen it go away as quickly as just a few minutes. Sometimes it's by the next day, and on more larger, more difficult things like I've seen diabetes and sleep apnea and things like that, and that may take a week or several weeks to disappear. But that's the essential three steps: identify the root, confess you were wrong because it's always something that we did wrong, and then what we're talking about, command it out. Migraine, I command you to leave now, right? And that's how it works.
Yeah, and it's so funny because our body intuitively knows what's going on, right? Like if you can write down something that's the addiction, you're putting it into your conscious space, and then your conscious wants to find a solution to that problem. It'll start searching for it. And like you said, sometimes the power of just repenting. And it's funny because I use a similar practice, not necessarily repenting, but I use the Ho'oponopono practice, which is I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you, which is again that same energy of letting it go. And often we forget that to give ourselves that grace and compassion, and that when you can forgive yourself, it's such a powerful thing. And the funny thing is, just a couple of days ago, I just interviewed a person who was all about forgiveness. She has books on forgiveness because it is such a big thing to say, I'm sorry, I was wrong, and it's your perceived wrongness too. What might feel wrong for you is not necessarily wrong for somebody else.
It's interesting, while we're just on the topic of forgiveness. So the way the Prayer of Freedom book works is I've mapped out about 18 different categories where these issues occur, where we've kind of violated uh, the standards that God put into our conscience. And it's used sort of as a memory jogger, but it's almost like it customizes that recipe so that if you think about a spiritual root and your issues as a spiritual virus, and you have to have a vaccine to kill it, then by going through this, it almost like creates a custom spiritual vaccine. Kind of a bad term, but kind of the picture that I'm trying to design is it's customized for each person. It's not a one size fits all. But with unforgiveness, it's the first and most important part that I've found. Watch this, just from forgiving someone. I've seen legally blind eyes open within 10 minutes and be 20/20 vision. I've seen someone with rheumatoid arthritis that she's had it for 20 years. The arthritis leaves by the next day, it's gone. She got retested by the doctor and her body shows no signs of arthritis. I've seen sciatica disappear. I've seen foot pain disappear. I've even seen someone who went through major reconstructive surgery in their shoulder where bones had healed wrong, so the doctor had to break them apart and put them back together. She just came out of surgery 4 weeks earlier, and simply from forgiving someone, all that was instantly healed. I've seen more things happen simply from forgiving, and it's a miraculous thing. And this is the thing I want to encourage with your listeners. You know about this, Catherine. You were talking about just like hitting your foot against that metal doorstop thing. Uh, when when we follow these spiritual laws, there is no such thing as a natural healing time frame. In other words, it is generally speaking, almost instantaneous and totally miraculous because medical science can't figure it out. I remember one guy, he was 35 years with a busted hip. He'd broken his hip playing college football. Uh, uh, our football, not the world's football, right? Not the round ball, but the little cone-shaped ball.
It's okay. We call it soccer too. We call it soccer. It's okay.
Oh,
So
okay,
football and
great,
soccer.
great.
We're
So
okay.
American football, not soccer. And he broke his hip. And the doctor said, wait as long as you can, but you will eventually need hip replacement surgery. And my friend was 6 years overdue at least for that. He was walking with a crutch. And I started asking him questions, little diagnostic questions to find out what is the spiritual root that could be at the bottom of this. And it went back to when he was in college or before. The only thing, watch this, I'm going to offend some people and I apologize. The only thing that I found was that he was having sex in high school, but sleeping around. And so I said, well, would you be willing to tell God that you're sorry, that you confess it was wrong, that you repent? He said, yes. And this is the other funny thing, Catherine. A lot of times people don't want to forgive someone or do something because they got hurt so much. But once it becomes like maybe the pathway for them to get healed, they're quick to say, oh, sure, I'll do anything, right? And so that's what I did with this guy. His name is Bud. I'm on the phone with him. He's actually a friend of mine. This was 2 years ago, and he was is so bad he was walking with a crutch even around his house. So I just led him in a short prayer saying, God, I'm sorry for sleeping with the fallen girls. And he just called them out. And then sometimes when you do certain things, there's a spiritual tie that we call like a unholy soul tie is what I call it, but it comes with different names. So we just made a declaration, just spoke, I break all these spiritual ties with these folks. And then asked God, would you now take away the pain in my hip? So I then had him stand up and said, stand up, Bud, and tell me how it is. And the phone goes dead. I mean, literally, I said, Bud, are you there? And I looked at my phone and made sure it was still connected. It was still going. It hadn't been disconnected. And I kept saying, Bud, Bud, are you there? I don't hear you. And then I hear this whimpering and he's crying. And at that moment, I knew exactly what was going on because this happens all the time. They're so astounded because they weren't expecting anything. After he regained his composure, he came back to the phone. It was like 2 or 3 minutes. And he said, Beatty, I have no pain. The first time in 3 years and 35 years, no pain. I said, well, really test it out. Not just stand up. Do you have any steps that you can actually climb up? So he goes up and down his steps, boo-hooing, walks into his bedroom with his wife. She goes, what's up? He said, honey, I have no pain. Her eyes bug open. And I was, for years now, he's walking without a crutch. And so these things happen instantly when you do it right, because we're not dealing with physical sciences, we're dealing with spiritual science. And spiritual science is a totally different game.
It's a quantum realm. So for me, from my perspective, how I work with my clients is I go into the quantum realm, which is God's realm, which is
Yeah.
where you can make all these things happen. And, when you were calling like untying the holy ties, is that what you said?
Mhm.
The unholy ties. I call it cord cutting. So,
That's great. Perfect.
same thing,
Same thing.
different idea. Yeah. And like you said too, it's often all our body is when it's in pain or when it's manifesting that dis-ease, whatever it might be, it's because of unaddressed emotions or unaddressed, like you said, spiritual reasons. And it's funny because when you were talking, sometimes my eyes will go worse. And I've done a lot of work to heal my eyes. I used to wear glasses and things like that. They're not perfect, but they're pretty close now. But I know my days are worse is because I'm choosing not to see something. Or for me, like I'm very blessed and I can hear intuition come through. And if my ears get blocked, I know I'm not listening to something. I'm not listening to a message coming through from God, or I'm not listening to a message that's coming through from, it might be someone that has a message for somebody I work with. So it's really interesting how, like, I felt it, but other people are probably there going, really? It's that simple? And it is. And there's so much work. Like, Beatty, you're doing all the research from your end. But then we've got beautiful places like the Heart Math Institute who are actually showing the power of prayer and showing the power of kindness and showing how it actually impacts our body. And my favorite study at the moment is they had were measuring people who were kind to other people, like giving genuine compliments or just acts of kindness. And the person doing the kind act improved in their health, but then the person receiving it improved in their health as well, because it's like you said, that power of prayer, and you're sharing this beautiful intent with people and letting go of all these things that were holding you back from being who you need to be.
What's really interesting, so for the audience, Catherine and I come from two completely different backgrounds from a spiritual standpoint, but yet we're
Yeah.
speaking the same language. And the thing that strikes me is two things. Number one, you go into this quantum realm, I think is what you call it,
Yeah.
quantum realm.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So I look at it as going into a heavenly or spiritual courtroom because technically, this is what I have understood. When I go into something dealing with prayer, instantly, while my body is still in this realm, my being of who I truly am, that's my soul, my mind, will, emotions, is in a different dimension, is in a different realm. And I'm actually in another place somewhere else. You're in the quantum realm. I view it as a courtroom for different reasons. But it's the same thing. We're going before a higher power, and now we're presenting our case before him or it, whatever you want to call it. And he's the one that actually causes, because he's the one that controls all the levers in the spiritual realm. The other thing I find fascinating is years back when I started, this was 8.5 years ago, I was given what I would call a gift of healing. I start praying for people, and a third of them would be healed. And then within a year, 90% of the people were healed from whatever it was I was praying for. And I realized one of the things that happened is another study that was done that helped me out a lot is there was a group that wanted to determine the importance of love when it comes to healing. So they had a group of people pray for another group and just pray for healing, but that's it. Then the other group, they said, pray for healing with love in your heart for that person. And there was a statistically measurable increase in healing by those who prayed with love. And so what we're dealing with is these love, hate, anger, uh, unforgiveness, all these are actually spiritual issues. And when we are focused on doing spiritual issues in the attitude of loving someone or in doing right, the power of what we do is far greater than just trying to accomplish an objective on our own. I don't know if that makes sense. It's probably poorly worded, but you get what
Yeah.
I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and it's almost like you just come from a place of service and from a place of actually just wanting to, share what you have and giving without expecting something back, like giving without expecting
Yeah.
a receiving. And I remember reading about the prayer project that you were talking about. And even there's been other ones where they've prayed over a person and that person miraculously healed. And it was just this power of prayer. Like I think it was like 30 people in a prayer room or something like that. Don't hold me to my facts. But it was like 30 people in a prayer room, and they were like praying over this one person who was, I think, on death's door and miraculously healed. And there's been so many studies being replicated of that and the power of that prayer. And in that moment, yes, we're all hoping that person recovers, but at the same time, you're just giving. There's no expectation back. You're not going to feel like you need to get that reciprocated, but it's just that act of giving and being in that act of service, which is where you get the miracles start to happen.
Can I take this to a different weird level for a moment?
Let's go. We're all about weird.
Good. Because when you're mentioning about being on death's door, um, I've got to give you the background of what I understand to be true. And keep in mind, when we're dealing with the spiritual side of things, I can't see in the spirit realm. You might be able to. I know some people can see spiritually, right? I don't. So I'm like a blindfolded person, and all I can do is I can test and measure outcomes. And so I create the theory of um, using some ancient religious texts to guide me on spiritual laws. And then I test those laws. And so far, I've been proven fairly accurate in these things. And what I understand is if I were to back up and say, what's the larger ecosystem that's going on in this? Because some of this makes no sense. And people, I'm sure, are listening go, well, that's just kooky. So I want to try to put some texture to it. So we have a couple of playing partners. So one partner in this creator God, and he wants us to do right, which he programmed into us in our conscience. But there's other characters out there I'll call spirits. I don't understand spirits. Some of them are evil spirits because they're really mean. And others are just spirits that do things on behalf of this God, right?
Yes,
and
correct.
What happens is when we violate what God wants us to do, we do something that our conscience at one point convicted us it was wrong. Then that opens a door, I'll call it a legal right, for a spirit to come in. If we don't confess it and don't own up to it, and we just kind of gloss over it, or we think, no one cares about it, so we don't do anything. Well, God cares. And so there's a spirit that comes in and starts to bring, best way to describe it for me, I just call them tormenting spirits. Because if I've got a headache, if I've got, arm that doesn't work, if I'm on addictions, right, they're all torments because they take away my quality of life. So now we've got a God, we've got an unrepented issue that we did, and then we got a consequence through a spirit. So what I'm finding is these spirits stay with us as long as we do not get rid of that spiritual root by simply confessing our sin. And a friend of mine who does a lot of this over here in the States, she was sharing when she was on hospice. She was a hospice care worker for a period of time. And one of the ladies she worked with, she was a 49-year-old woman. She was, for those who don't know, hospice means you have 6 weeks to live or less. I mean, you're on death's bed. And this lady was 49 years old, dying of Parkinson's disease. And at this point, she was so weak that the only thing she could do is move her pinky of one hand, and that was it. All the color had gone out of her body. So Phyllis, my friend, was in there and said, well, how did you catch Parkinson's disease? And in a very soft whisper, Madeline was saying, you can't catch Parkinson's. If you could, you wouldn't be in this room with me. She said, my husband had Parkinson's, and after he died, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's. So Phyllis, understanding these spiritual laws and these cords, these spiritual connections that tie people together, she asked, well, did you ever sleep with your husband before you got married? And Madeline got a little flustered, as much as she could show it. And she said, well, yes, but what does that matter? Why is that important? And Phyllis started to explain about this whole concept of these spiritual roots. When you do something that this Creator God said not to do, one would be sleeping outside of marriage with someone. And then what happens is it opens up a doorway that anything can happen. And what Phyllis started to explain is because of that, the spirit of Parkinson, after it killed your husband, now moved to you because it had a legal right through that spiritual cord of what y'all established when y'all slept together. And all we need to do is we need to repent of sleeping together and cut that cord, as you use. So she did. She led Madeline into just saying, God, I repent and confess, should not, sleeping with my husband, my fiance before we married was wrong. And I cut that spiritual cord between us. And then they
Mm.
commanded Parkinson out. That was it. So then
Mm.
Phyllis comes back the next week. And Madeline, all the color had come back to her cheek. She was sitting up in bed, and they just had this wonderful conversation, chit-chatting. And then Phyllis came back the next week. This is now 2 weeks after the first visit. And Madeline wasn't there. She went to the nurse's station and said, "Where's Madeline?" We discharged her earlier this week. From being on deathbed to walking out on her own 2 feet in less than 2 weeks. And all she did is treated the spiritual issue of confessing that problem, what she did, and breaking that spiritual tie. And it all left.
And I think it's really important too, like it's perceived wrongness because it's what, our culture and our upbringing and that makes us believe is a wrong thing as well. Because often something that you might think's wrong in one culture is not wrong in another culture. And it can be that perceived wrongness which then lays that seed, like you said, in the consciousness of this was wrong, even though to another person it might not be. But because you had that belief or you've had that imprinted on you, it's almost like you have a guilt associated with and a shame. And that shame is one of the lowest vibrating emotions. If you have shame, it's going to cause a lot of issues in your life coming out.
Quite a bit.
And I feel that that's where that element of that confession comes from. It's almost like a confession, but like you said, it's repenting, because it's like you're freeing yourself from that guilt that you have buried down, because you've never been brave enough to talk about it either, or you've never been brave enough to have the courage to bring it up and label, oh yeah, actually I did feel a bit wrong about doing that, or I did feel, that's something that I never forgave myself for. And I guess that perception too is really interesting, from seeing people from very different cultures and different walks of life, and how our upbringing and our beliefs and our culture can really impact on what we perceive as wrong and what we don't.
Really true. The thing that's hitting me that I want to share with the audience is so many things are tied to these spiritual laws that we don't understand.
Yeah.
Because, watch this, talking about addressing these things of shame and just confessing them. Confession doesn't necessarily say that you pray to God. Get down on your knees and you pray, Almighty God. You don't have to do that. Because watch this, psychotherapists, they will heal you, help get you out of these deep issues by simply taking you back to a point of trauma, and you actually acknowledge it in a conscious state. I acknowledge that, you deal with it. And then all these root issues that you've been dealing with for life go away. And it has nothing to do with praying to God. Or you can pray to God and address it and confess it. Or you can actually use, I'm sure, frequencies to heal and all kinds of things. And so what this shows is the intricacy of the spiritual world that we live in, that we don't understand, but it's almost as if we're all dealing on the same laws, but we're applying the process maybe slightly different, but we're still getting there. Does that make sense?
Exactly. Yeah, because we all have unique gifts. We all have a unique way of understanding God's work and how we are here to serve this in the world. So, for example, my husband, I call him a hand healer because he has this ability to put his hands on whatever bit of you is sore and find the trigger and find the root cause of it and relieve it. But I don't have hand healing. I'm very intuitive. So I do intuitive healing, and it's whatever God's gifts that he gave you, because we all have gifts. And Beatty, I feel yours is to share the power of prayer and how, using your words and setting those intentions is really powerful. And the amazing thing too is there's so much stuff backing that up too. Like we were talking about the prayer experience, but then what came to my head before was the Emoto water healing, water experiment where we're speaking those different words aloud. When they froze it, had those different patterns. We're made of 70% water. So if you're speaking really positive things and commanding things to happen, your body is receiving that energy behind those words to help shift that energy happening there. And exactly like you said, we all have a unique way of sharing that with the world. And it doesn't mean one thing's wrong or one thing's right. It just means there are different pathways to get to the same end goal. There's different options. Yeah.
I would like to, there's a lot of people probably listening to this that are stuck, dealing with some sort of issue. that you and I, if we were to consult with them, could probably help resolve them pretty quickly. But they're not dealing with you or me personally. They're listening to this and going, boy, I sure wish I could, do something with her or do something with him. One of the things that I found fascinating, and one of the skill sets that the Lord has given me is to see patterns, identify these patterns, and then create a systematic structure so that the pattern can be replicated easily. Does that make sense? Sort of like
Yes.
McDonald's, they got a pattern, and every McDonald's does everything the exact same way, and every McDonald's seems to be super successful financially because they got the system down. One of the things I started to see as I was praying for people and guiding them is bit by bit, I started to see these patterns. And as I mentioned with my book, the Prayer of Freedom book, that I started to identify these categories of where all of these things that we do wrong from God's perspective, we may not think they were wrong. You mean sleeping with your girlfriend is wrong? Well, from his perspective, he says yes. That doesn't mean you have to be ashamed about it. It just means that if you're dealing with some physical issues, it may have something to do with that, right? So let's just try it and see. Let's just confess it. So I started to map this out, and the exact words that you use, because as you go into this quantum realm, I'm going into this courtroom, this spiritual courtroom, because if these truly are legal rights that give a spirit a right to bring torment to us until we confess of that, then in any courtroom, there are legal words that you use and there are other words that you don't. I mean, it's a structured environment. And this is the thing I've been finding so fascinating. You don't even have to believe this to work. And to some degree, you really don't have to be, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that I did that. I feel horrible. Most people don't feel horrible at all. I mean, they just say, okay, I'm going to read these words out because they want to get free. And so they'll at least, hey, Lord, yeah, God, I confess I probably shouldn't have gotten angry at this person and blown up and beat their truck, broke their truck windshield, whatever it is. So with this, if someone is out there and stuck and you want to get free, the cool thing about my book and what I've done is the first half explains what this is. And the second half walks you through a step-by-step process. Literally asks you questions, you fill in some blanks, and then based on what you fill in, it gives you the word pattern to use as a prayer and inserting what you fill in into the blanks, sort of like what I call mail merge, where you have a list of addresses. Yeah, road. You're right. It's just a little map. And now it creates a custom process for you. Then that's all that's happening with these women at the Addiction Recovery Center, where they're getting 90% of them are getting free of these things. So if someone's stuck and you're not sure, you wish you had an easier process, this makes it really easy.
Yeah, and it's often we have this a lot of us have this belief too that we have to do this alone. And that's not the case at all. Like you can reach out to other people, like you were saying, like if you can't work with us, then you now have this option of like this book. And if you're curious, I always say if you're curious, follow that curiosity because it's often your soul saying, this is the way, let's go investigate that more. And when you feel that curiosity, that is when the magic happens as well, because then you just start making choices about what lights you up and brings you joy in your soul. And then you can go, okay, this aligns with me. I'm going to follow this. I'm going to read this. I'm going to investigate this, and being open and curious and willing to learn. And like we started, it's like full circle. Being open to change and willing to change will lead to the changes that you need in your life. But if you're completely closed off, you're not going to end up here anyway. You're not going to end up in this conversation.
Yeah, I remember there was one of the sales training I went through many years back. One of the guys was talking about if you continue doing the same thing you've done for the last 3 years, 3 years from now you'll be exactly where you are today.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
You got to be willing to change. I have so many, not so many, but one of the things that led me down this path I'll tell you, the real thing that started leading me down this path to do this is we had a couple of friends all within 2 years. 3 different people died of cancer, and they were young. 2 of them were pastor wives, so they believe in God that can heal, and they believe in prayer, and God never did. And so they came to the conclusion, well, gosh, it must have been God's will simply for them to die. And I go, no, you get that wrong. You didn't do it right. And so that's one of the things that really prompted me to to take a deep dive in this, understand it, and start to systematize it, because so many people are stuck and they want to get freedom. But as you said, you got to be willing to change. And so from that, I'm going to give my good sales pitch on this, right? So you buy a book from any bookseller, and they typically give you 30 days and you can return it. So even if you're skeptical on something like this stupid prayer thing, yeah, sure, it can't be that easy. Confess a few of these things, make a list and memory jogger, and just read these words, and all of a sudden my anxiety goes, and my pain in the back goes, and my glaucoma disappears. Well, it really can be that easy. But here's the challenge: you don't even have to read the book. Just go to the back and do the worksheet. And if it doesn't, yeah,
Beatty's giving you permission to cheat.
absolutely, because the first part of the book just explains what's going on. Yeah, we're explaining here, but you don't have to understand what's going on to apply the process. So just go to the back of the book, do the worksheet, and watch this. You got 30 days. It'll take you 3 days, maybe, if you go at a slow pace and just do it in a few minutes here and there. It'll take you maybe 3 days to get through the worksheet and the prayer process. If it didn't clear everything up, just send the book back, and it's cost you nothing. It's money back guarantee to work.
I love it. I love it. So as we start to finish up our time together, Beatty, I feel like we could go down so many different paths, but we need to wrap up. So I asked the guests that come on the show, and I feel like I know what your answer is, but if you could heal or change something in the world, what would it be?
Something in the world? I want to heal the world, not just something. I have a deep compassion for people who are struggling, and a deep compassion because I don't struggle with anything, and I've helped people get free. And a lot of times we think that that problem in our life is so big and it'll never leave because we prayed and God never heals it. We go to doctor and they do, medicated up, and nothing's changing. And and you asked me at the beginning of the call, uh, why I teach, or how did I make it to the Addiction Recovery Center. That is the bright spot in my life, because I get to make an impact in people's lives for something that they never thought they could get free of, because nothing's worked. They live in constant pain, constant anguish, constant addiction. And if I could leave anyone with any messages, it doesn't have to be that way. And this is a proven, simple, systematic thing. You don't even have to understand how it works. Simply, if you can paint by numbers, you can go through this prayer freedom book, because all it does is it leads you step one, write down anything that comes to your mind on this topic. Write down anything on this topic. Write down anything on this topic, and then say these words and insert those things that you made. I mean, it's a healing by system. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to even have remorse that, oh my gosh, I feel so bad that I did these things. No, you just have to say, I'm sorry that I did it. Now, would you please take this headache away? And it's like, bing, it starts to go away for 90% of people. So that's the one thing. If I could do anything, it would just say, just get the message out so people can have an abundant life.
Yeah, which is so beautiful, because in the end, the easier your life can be, the more that you can then go out and serve and be your true self, and, allow yourself to shine in this world as well, rather than being stuck in the suffering. Yeah.
Amen.
So if people want to find your book, they can head to theprayeroffreedombook.com, and it's in bookstores. Like you said, there's a 30-day money back guarantee. So just give it a go and see what you feel. And, if you're just curious and you're listening to this and you wanted to just experiment with it, why not? What have you got to lose, right? You can just have a go, like you said, 3 days, Beatty, and you'll know straight away if it's working or if it's not working, but also to go in with an open mind and the willingness to change, because if you're going to go in and go, oh, I'm going to prove it wrong, it's not going to work.
No, I want you to prove it wrong.
Oh, yeah,
Try
there
me.
we go.
You can't. Prove it. Hey, go through it. Do the simple process it says.
I love it.
And try to prove it wrong, because 90% of the time it will work. And that's the thing that I keep saying is it will work. But go to theprayeroffreedombook.com. All that does is it takes you to a page with a button to go to online booksellers, so you get the right book. There's a lot of books on prayers and freedoms and everything else. So theprayeroffreedombook.com. You guys got Amazon in Australia. We got it in America.
me too.
It's all through Europe. And there's a button that takes you to the universal link to the Amazon page to get it. So it makes it really super simple. And there's some other free stuff and discounts and things on that page too, if you want.
Beautiful. And I'll make sure all of that's included in the show notes as well, so everyone can find your amazing book, Beatty. And thank you so much for your time and for being on the show.
Well, thank you, Catherine. I love being here.
Thank you for listening to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We have so much love and gratitude that you have taken the time out of your day to empower you on your healing journey. The views shared by the person being interviewed might not necessarily reflect that of the host and should be used at your own discernment. Trust what resonates for you and follow your heart and soul guidance. If you have any underlying medical conditions or mental health issues, please consult with your healthcare provider before pursuing any of the recommendations. Likewise, you can always contact the person being interviewed to find out more information. This can be found in the show notes. Remember to activate, align, heal, empower, and find love in everything that you do.